every one. You know, our dear friend Charles penned A Christmas Carol in the winter of 1843. And from that Christmas forward, this beloved tale has raised the spirits and warmed the cockles of every generation. For those of you who are yet to experience hot cockles, I assure you you will at some point this evening. Now, let's see here. But before we get into the rip-roaring, riveting edge of your excitement of this evening's performance, I do feel obligated to give you a little bit of a disclaimer. You see, this is not in any way, shape, or form going to be your standard telling of the tale. So if anyone is overly attached to that, hypersensitive, or in any manner politically correct, now might be a good time to run like hell. Now let's see, we have a lot of ground to cover. Does everybody have a program? You all have a program? Let's see. We have Marley's Done, Christmas Past, Christmas Present, Christmas Yet to Come. Well, that's a lot. Well, if we're going to polish off all the spirits by the end of the evening, we had probably better get started. Tiny Tim was not the only one to ever have a crush. And I know for a fact that Rudolph's was not the only red and shining nose. And I have heard the expression, I'd rather have a bottle in front of me than in front of the bottom any day. But in my case, the end result is somewhat indistinguishable. Anyway, to get started. Well, I should probably start by reminding you, we all are familiar with our story's characters, are we not? And we are familiar with our storyline, but in case anybody needs just a bit of a refresher, I should probably remind you that Marley was dead to begin with. Now this must be distinctly understood, or nothing wonderful can come of the tale that I am about to relate. Scrooge knew he was dead, of course he did. How could it be otherwise? The register of his burial was signed by the clergyman, the clerk, the undertaker, and by Marley's sole administrator, sole executor, sole assign, sole legatee, sole partner, sole friend, and sole mourner, Ebenezer Scrooge. Now, even Scrooge was not so cut up by the sad event, but that he, being an excellent man of business, on the very day of the funeral, solemnized it with an undoubted bargain, cash on the barrelhead. The mention of Marley's funeral brings me back to my original point, that Marley was dead. Not just merely dead, but really most sincerely dead as a doornail. Now, I do not profess to know why a doornail should be considered any deader than any other kind of nail. I would think a coffin nail to be the deadest nail of all, but for the sake of time and of tradition, we shall leave it at that. Old Marley was as dead as a doornail. Scrooge, cheap as he was, never painted out old Marley's name. There it hung, with his, years afterwards, creaking away above their counting house door. S&M. Scrooge and Marley. The firm was known as Scrooge and Marley. A knowing person sometimes called Scrooge Scrooge or Scrooge Marley. It made no difference to him, for to him it was, and they really were, just the same. Oh, but Scrooge was all the more a horrible, greedy, grasping, scraping, wrenching, covetous old miser, hard as steel, sharp as flint, tight as a clam, and just as warm. A man of distinction, a real big spender.